This is the Relentless podcast. My name is Christine. I'm a small business owner and student of success. I have become obsessed with talking with other entrepreneurs about their strategies, struggles, tactics, and routines. One of the key qualities that all of these individuals have in common, their ability to be relentless. Welcome back to the Relentless podcast. I'm Christine Van Duzen, and I have a producer of this show, Paul Russo, and every week I come in here, I bombard him with so many questions about podcasting and YouTube and all the things, and I thought, you know what? Why don't we let people listen to all my questions? So, Paul Russo, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for agreeing to answer my annoying questions on camera. So
They're not annoying.
For people that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into podcasting.
Yeah. It's been a weird, interesting journey, I guess, as many things kind of start out. So graduated from Minders Academy here in Seneca Falls in 2012. Went to college at Gannon University in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Majored in sports management and marketing.
Okay.
And at the time going into that, I figured I'd probably be a general manager, something like that, somewhere for some sports team, but not the case. Came back here after graduating in 2016, did Parks and Rec for a little bit here in town in Seneca Falls, and in October of 2021, came on over here to Finger Lakes 1 and started doing the producing and broadcasting and podcasting and streaming, and it's been quite the fun, like I said, it's weird, interesting, but more importantly, it's been a fun journey above all to get to this point.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, and so you have a background in sports. You must have a love and a passion for sports. So tell us a little bit about how that led you to being on camera.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, it's funny to look back on now in a little bit of a ways, because I'd say when I first got to high school, like 9th grade, freshman year, whatever, I guess whatever it's called now, to be fair.
Yeah.
I definitely thought the broadcasting and journalism side would be where I would end up.
Okay. Initially,
anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen. I ended up taking a couple business courses, which I love. I still have a pretty big passion for. A couple of the podcasts that I am involved in on the hosting side of it, as well as producing, like I'll shamelessly plug Concrete Jungle, for example, our baseball
all
one.
The shameless plugs.
Our baseball one, for example, I don't mind going down into certain diatribes about how, say, the Yankees or the Mets are constructed and stuff like that. And so, like, that portion of it still has a pretty big backside and passion for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, I got through high school, did some business course. I'm like, oh, yeah, the sports management thing, all about it, right?
Yeah.
Figured it'd be more me. I definitely realized by the time I got the senior year, 12th grade year, like, the professional baseball thing's not going to, playing-wise, going to go the way I initially thought.
Okay.
So, as we all probably hope for in that realm. But, yeah, and so I guess part of it, was just kind of growing up. I was always in, whether it was the rec league stuff, little league, stuff like that. It's kind of fostered and grew, and here we are now, and we're recording this in July 2023. Been able to do the podcasting, sports elements of it, and broadcasted 2 state championship games for girls basketball, which is crazy to think about. If you were to ask me back in October 21, for example, I would have been like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Type thing. And I think a lot of it, like I said, just over time, whether it's been with family and friends and stuff like that, who, just the camaraderie of everything. And it's kind of, I'd say, taken off from there and really has enveloped most of my life, good and bad at the same time. But yeah, I'd say that's where everything kind of sports-wise kind of grew from.
It's so crazy because we always have this idea of what our life's going to look like. And I make the joke because my brother, he knew what he wanted to do in high school. Mm-hmm. He went to college. He got his master's, got like straight path.
Right.
Me, I've been like all over the map.
Right.
I go every which way. And same thing. I mean, I remember telling my guidance counselor in high school that he asked me what my interests were because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I told him fashion. And he's like, yeah, that's a really hard career to go into. And I was basically like, okay, and like that was that. And so it's interesting. I mean, even if you set out with these specific plans in mind, you just never know where life is going to take you. And in your case, an interest that you had. I mean, you have to have a very good understanding of the game, of the sport, to be able to do commentary on it, because that's what one of your podcasts is. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the concrete jungle side of things. And baseball is my favorite sport, hands down. Yeah. And luckily, that's obviously the main topic of that. Myself and Kyle Evans, who handles everything sports-wise here at Finger Lakes One.
Okay. He's
the co-host on it with me, and we discuss the Yankees and the Mets, but we also discussed the Rochester Red Wings and Syracuse Mets, the AAA affiliates here quasi-locally in Rochester and Syracuse, obviously.
Yeah.
And, obviously the passion element helps there, right?
Yeah.
But, obviously, like I said, baseball, #1 sport for me. I don't call it coaching because I'm with adults, and it's tough to exactly coach when you're an adult. In my mind with that, I call it more like field managing or sometimes controlling chaos every now and then. But and then also, I do Fresh Takes, me and my good friend Nick Felice. And that one's more of the general sports stuff, but, it obviously helps because, he works over at the Finger Lakes Times.
Okay.
And so, for example, harken back here and shout to, say, the Waterloo girls basketball team who won the state title this year for Class B.
Yeah.
We were in Albany together for that, and it's one of those things where it's, you can banter back and forth and it helps everything when you have, say, that chemistry a little bit. And that helps too. Maybe if you don't have that exact knowledge that you maybe should have in this situation.
Yeah.
It kind of helps and it takes off from there a little bit.
Yeah, and you kind of feed off each other a little bit. Right,
exactly, 100%.
Yeah. So, okay. So, baseline, starting from scratch, someone wants to start a podcast. Sure. Do you say, you have to be an expert, or you just have to have an interest? You have to have a following? What are the first steps to starting a podcast, or the credentials, I guess you would say?
To me, I'd say it's the interest / passion. Yeah. More than anything else. That's kind of how really Fresh Takes started. Me, myself, and Nick, he ended up getting a podcast kit for Christmas. And we did a few episodes on our own. And then, Jim Sankropi here at Finger Lakes One kind of picked us up more or less on it. And we only had maybe 5 or 6 episodes that we did on our own before hopping over here.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have obviously a following or anything like that.
Okay.
And I would argue maybe somewhat still we don't exactly have a following, but I think to me, it's the passion of it. And I'll piggyback off of here and I'll say sitting over normally where I produce for when we have guests in here with you.
Yeah.
That's where I think it's really important because you have a very big passion for this.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you can look at following Christine on any social media platform, you can tell it's passionate. And I think you can grow anything off of that passion at that point. And so that's where, to me, especially podcasting or maybe really anything in general, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
If you have the passion for it, that's where you start from. And anything from there, it builds off of.
Yeah. Yeah. Passion and definitely hard work. That's the other piece. But,
well, definitely.
Well, and it's interesting because neither of us are necessarily qualified on paper to be doing this, but we're doing it. And it's the way that people consume media and content. It's just changed so much. The way people consume news, it's just a completely different thing. And you're seeing this rise in independent media. And not all of the people where people are getting their news from are necessarily even journalists. They just are informed most of the time, informed individuals who just set out on their own without a corporation backing them or anything like that. So do you think, places like Substack or Patreon or just YouTube, do you think that's the future of how people are going to consume media, news, content?
I think overall, yes. I don't know if it will exactly look maybe the way Substack looks right now, or even the way YouTube looks right now, for example.
Yeah.
And I only say that because I think I kind of look at, say, TikTok, for example. And June of last year, I didn't use TikTok at all.
Really?
Nope.
Okay.
And since then, it's become one of my favorite apps to kind of go to in general, even.
Yep.
It's interesting, too, because for me, I'm a big Reddit guy. I love going on Reddit, kind of seeing different stuff. And it's kind of funny because you're able to hide behind a username there more so than, say, even you can do it on, say, YouTube, TikTok, any social media. Yeah. To be completely honest, right? Yeah. But at least with like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, so on and so forth, there's usually a picture. There's usually there's face some still,
identifying, right? Yeah.
Reddit, there's not. And
that's what I was going to say. Are you a shit talker, Paul? Because that's what I think of.
I am not. I tend to be the wannabe like meme lord almost in a way. But I bring up Reddit because I'll be perusing anyone, like really the subreddits that I look at are pretty much anything sport wise for the most part. Yeah. And it's always funny when news kind of gets leaked onto there. And I say leaked because people, like I said, they hide behind the username. And it's usually somebody in the know about something. So I'll bring up a really good one, the NASCAR subreddit. I'm a NASCAR fan. And back in, I want to say, it had to have been March or April, when not even a quarter way through the season, silly season pops up, and all of a sudden you kind of see one of the sponsors is going to be jumping ship to a new team next year. And it's like, nah, they wouldn't do that. And lo and behold, I'm not going to say the name because they can bring the money to us. But lo and behold, they have the announcement about it about it 2 days ago, last night. And it's like, so that person, username John Doe 20 is right. So I think a lot of the stuff, I don't know what way, shape, or form it's going to look like, but I think, because we already kind of do see it though, in a way. Right. Where it's like the YouTubes, your Substacks, the stuff that you can put your own voice on. Yeah. Kind of takes off already.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so interesting because you said you graduated college in 2016. Yeah. So, I mean, that was, the beginning of the Trump era, which was, a very heated political time, regardless of whether you love him or hate him. There are both sides. But what's interesting is during that time also, we saw such an emergence of politics on all of these apps. And I lost my train of thought. No. Okay.
You're good.
The emergence on all of these apps. And it was almost like, because the rest of the time before that, the media were the gatekeepers of information, and they could kind of determine what information they wanted released and what they didn't. And you'd have journalists who did their job and, kind of blew the whistle on certain things. But now all of a sudden, there were these political discussions going on social media with people who are in the know and people who are not. They just have very strong opinions. And so it's such a difficult landscape because it has so many positives and so many negatives.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's kind of hard. I guess it's good if you're on there looking on a certain topic. Like you say, you really are like hardcore into sports. So are you able to like parse out the negativity and the politics, or is that kind of just ingrained, baked into the cake at this point?
I mean, it's tough because sometimes it is just, it's naturally ingrained. Yeah. I mean, I remember 2020, right? Go to the pandemic stuff here and George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and everything. And you have people telling, frankly, like LeBron James and other people, shut up and dribble, for example. And that's all. I don't say I don't like, I get it, but like sports at the same token have also been frankly politicized since really kind of ever in a lot of ways, right? I mean, the perfect example of it is the Olympics. It's this giant international competition where you literally pit countries against each other, let alone individuals. But at the end of the day, right, what's the one thing that people love marketing the most? The medal counts at the end of it. Right. And it's not by individual. It's not, unless you're Michael Phelps, I guess. Yeah. but at the end of the day, it's usually, right, USA, Russia, China, Germany, the United Kingdom, so on and so forth, right? Yeah. It's never Michael Phelps. It's never Usain Bolt. It's never the individual. Yeah. the end of the day. So I think it's tough sometimes to fully maybe separate because some stuff is so intertwined. But at the end of the day, there is some stuff where if it's a certain topic that I know I can avoid a certain discourse on, absolutely, I'll try. To avoid. It's one of the reasons, frankly, that I try and stay off Facebook a lot of times now.
Oh, I know.
It's like I just don't. It's not like I don't have the mental capacity for it. It's one of those like, do I want to waste those extra 5 seconds on this? Like, nah, not really.
I know. I think there was a point in time where you could actually have like decent debates.
Oh, absolutely.
With people about things, and maybe like you could each be like, okay, yeah, I see that. And maybe I don't agree, but I see it, but that's kind of past, I feel like. And the other piece is I think we're all just so burnt out on it.
Yeah.
I mean, for the longest time, it was like you needed to know someone's political affiliation to do business, to do anything. And now it's just like, I don't care. I don't want to know. You're almost a little bit burned out about it. It's like, are you a good person? Are you nice? Good enough for me.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting because one of the things that I was thinking about when preparing for this interview was another thing that's happening on kind of all these apps with podcasting, with YouTube. One of the debates that's come up has been free speech.
Yeah.
And you and I are kind of from different generations. We're close, but not as close as I would like. I'm a little bit older than you. But I kind of grew up in the camp where, liberals, Democrats, the ACLU fought for like even the rights of Holocaust deniers to have an opinion and to vocalize it here in our country. And, that it's most important to protect speech that you do disagree with.
Right.
And of course, during, like I say, the Trump era and COVID, this new kind of thing came into the conversation, misinformation.
Right.
And it's caused, certain things the lines of censorship to get very blurry. And for me, that's very concerning. I look at that from my kind of old school view and I'm like, the best way to get through some of these, like the best way to counteract bad speech is with good speech, have open debate, debunk these things, all of that.
Right.
So I'm just curious, for your generation, what's your standpoint on it?
Oh, man, I think a lot of it's, I don't want to say a lot of it's mixed bag, but I think part of it is definitely in line. I'd say maybe not fully. How can I want
putting you in the hot seat, Paul. You weren't ready for that.
Because I think I'm trying to like pull from it for me personally, where I don't want to say it's like I don't care, but like you're gonna have your opinion. I'm gonna have mine. Yeah. And it's whatever. And at the end of the day, opinions are gonna be somewhat fact based. Right. For the most part.
Okay.
I'll piggyback off the example like the Holocaust survivor to / denier in this situation. Yeah. I think where a lot of it gets polarized is the fact that it can just be so widespread. Yeah. And the Holocaust was a very real thing. The Holocaust is single-handedly the worst humanity. Yeah. I don't even know how to properly like describe it at that point.
Crime against humanity.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Where I think maybe something like that, I don't want to say you want to pull the rug out from underneath people like exactly, but maybe that's where that quote unquote misinformation gets handled, right? Whereas general political discourse, whether it comes down to say military spending and budgets and stuff like that, where like for me, where it's like everybody should have the opinion heard on that one. Yeah. I think it maybe depends where the topic actually lies in a way.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that because I think that's where some of the argument came in for censorship, especially during the pandemic. People were saying, well, yeah, but if we let this information get out, it can lead to this or that. But what was interesting, too, is that we kept seeing the goalpost move where it was like something that was misinformation 6 months ago was then coming out as like CDC guideline, as like stated fact. And so that's why the last few years have solidified that for me where I'm like, yes, this is why we need to have those conversations. Obviously, though, it also opens up the door for shitty people and bullying. And obviously, online bullying has become an issue. And I didn't realize the different levels. I'm picturing like high school bullies, stuff. But since making content and stuff, you start to kind of see in the Reddits and in the comment section the just straight up haters. And I mean, very vicious people. Have you experienced that on any of your stuff?
Personally, no. Nothing geared, I'd say, directly towards, say, me or like any of the co-hosts, or really, I'd say anybody in particular, particularly at least here. I'd say most of the hate that we see, what I would say directed at us in terms of like when we, are live on a podcast or anything like that, is just the general kind of like trollings or whatever. It's interesting because here at FL1, we are lucky. Not only do we have the sports, right? We have a ton of different content.
Yeah.
And so, not to turn semi-comedy here in a way, but I kind of chuckle at some of the comments I see about, whether it's something about, say, like the city of Geneva or something going on, and it's, where it's like...
The Facebook comment section on Finger Lakes one is wild. It's the Wild West in there.
But for me, like if we're live on something, and I'm over at the desk, for example, and so like I'll see the comments coming in live if somebody comments it.
Yeah.
Whether it's on YouTube or Facebook when we do the Facebook stuff. And it's like, really? Like, that's where you're going with this?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like one of those things where it's, I think we talked about one time off air, and if not, then this is an ultimate, like, peel back the onion a little bit. Somebody, and this is a big issue in Geneva, right? They always talk about the railroad yard right out along the lake. From like, like sitting there with one comment, like, you literally cannot physically move railroad tracks like that or equipment like it's like one of those like ounces of common sense. Like, can we just not have it? But I guess to go back to really the original stuff, I've never directly had to deal with it with stuff here. I've dealt with a little bit of it on my own accord, but even then it's been a while. Like the one example I always kind of think back to is, do you talk about 2016, for example? I had an old teammate of mine call me out like, oh, you're just drinking the Kool-Aid on whatever. I'm like, what? Like, no, like my opinion, you have your opinion, I have mine. Like if you think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, it's probably because I am sipping some tropical punch because it's delicious. Like not that type of Kool-Aid. So yeah, luckily I'd say, and I have, and then if I usually do encounter something, I usually, like I say, I tend to find a meme of Stephen A. Smith or something and just kind of, let it be what it is.
So you've kind of built a tough skin. So that was one of my questions was going to be like, when you put a piece of content out or you upload a video, do you just like post and ghost and let it do its thing? Or are you in the comments chatting with people? Like, how do you,
I tend not to be in the comments if I don't have to be.
Yeah.
And luckily I really haven't had to really do that in my time here.
Okay.
Usually if I have to hop in the comments, it's because I do enjoy having, I'd say, some discourse about whatever. And luckily, now it's what? Spotify for podcasters as opposed to Anchor, right?
Yes.
If I remember this right, even though
I know that.
Even though I'm on it every day, that's, the general brain haze going on. But, what's awesome about that is, now they do have these features where you can deliberately ask questions, these Q&As outside of, and they do have the, that standard, what did you think of this episode?
Right.
But, every now and then, if we come across a really interesting topic, I'll put, whether it's a poll or, just a quick, 2-word answer thing you can put in there, I'll do it, and I'll kind of sit in there, and sometimes it's hit and miss, right? Sometimes you do get the responses you want, other times not so much, and that part of it is what it is. But stuff like that is where I will say in the comments and kind of interact if I can a little bit, because everybody may have a difference of opinion, like.
And it probably will feed more content for you.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like an analytical show and you kind of talk about stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, frankly, some of the stuff right now for, say, Concrete Jungle with baseball is we've been talking about the same problems now for both the Mets and the Yankees for borderline 2 months.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like, I'll be sitting here and it's like, how many times can I talk about the Mets letting the kids play, for example?
Yeah.
Outside of still having Daniel Vogelbach go out there and bat 167.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's okay. It's all right.
I will trust that you know what you're talking about.
167's not good.
Okay.
And as I put, the kids can't be any far worse, and they're just going to get better at this point.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is, right, I mean, that could just be for any podcast, right? I mean, luckily, if there was one positive, I'd say, there were a few positives and a few negatives, right, about 2020.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it kind of put a different spin on things. Like, I remember we were doing Fresh Takes still during that, and we weren't doing it as regularly. We ended up taking borderline like a month or so off because obviously there's just no sports, there's just nothing going on, and there's no need for two of us who borderline, you may think, know nothing to next to nothing anyway, talk about whatever. But, you know, we came back in about a month and a half after everything kind of happened. NASCAR was kind of going to get back going again. So there was going to be, albeit something small, but something to discuss.
Sure.
But, you know, we were able to kind of go in, and we were actually, it's funny, one of my favorite podcasts we ever did was within that. I think we did a top 10 lunch food ranking from school. And it's like,
it forced you a little.
Well, kind of, yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, Turkey a la King does rule. Like, you know, and, but it's like one of those things where it's like, if when you're put in a box, you can find something different to talk about. But it is tough sometimes. I mean, it really is. It can be tough sometimes because at the end of the day, if the one thing you are covering, if nothing's changing on it, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. You can only spin it so many ways before you end up back at the same point at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, whether it be the news cycle, sports stuff, I mean, it just moves so quickly.
Right.
And so it's almost like you have this pressure to have a hot take, like super fast, or it's already on to the next thing. I mean, how do you do a weekly show? How do you guys do it?
Yeah. So Fresh Takes, we do primarily it's every week, but in the summer we go every other week because despite me and Nick, we could talk general baseball. We know that's not what most people want at this point. So we go every other week until pretty much end of NBA and NHL playoffs end.
Okay.
Until mid-August when football really kind of ramps up a little bit with their training camps and preseason stuff. But Concrete Jungle, we do 2 times a week during the baseball season, and then we kind of move to once a week / once a month, depending upon how things are moving in the off season.
Okay.
And so it kind of, that helps keep things, I'd say, naturally fresh.
Okay.
In a way, anyway. And it's always, you know, worst case scenario is if something breaks, you can always, what's nice about today's day and age, you can always pick up Zoom. I know, like, coming up next week, I have, for example, a couple of appointments. So me and Kyle will just do a couple of Zoom podcasts quick in and out and get those done. Or, you know, we can hop on here quick and just go live. And that's kind of the beauty of it is, if it's something breaking, you can just hop on quick and pump something out in 15 minutes or so. Yeah. And it's there. Yeah. And you don't have to worry about it, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, for the whole year, it's tough to just find stuff sometimes. So we try and keep it as fresh as we can, keep it as, let's say, at least in the path as we can for feeds and stuff like that. And kind of just, it does its own thing in a way at that point. You know, because we already have our people who are going to listen to this point, and we do get new people every now and then. It's kind of crazy to look at the metrics on Spotify for podcasts or sometime. It's like, I don't know why anybody's listening to us in Germany, but more power to you. You know, we appreciate it. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's there.
Well, so what is your favorite app, I guess, to use if someone's starting a podcast? I mean, we elected to do video because when I listen to podcasts, like, I love being able to go on and watch their facial expressions. I hate when they're like talking about a photo or something and you're like, what photo? I can't see it. Yeah. and I just like to see the people. But I know there are also a lot of podcasts that don't have video. So, you know, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, all the places. But do you have a particular favorite for your podcast?
So I'd say for what we do, and also for my own listening pleasure and watching pleasure elsewhere, I really think Spotify for podcasters is the best way to kind of go at the moment. And I say that because they have both the audio and visual option. Okay. So every podcast that I do that I hands-on, I guess, kind of put into, you know, the World Wide Web, the internet sphere, goes through Spotify for podcasters. And so that way it does have the visual and audio element to it. You know, it's interesting because for me, I'm kind of actually the opposite, because I'm always, whether it's driving to Rochester for baseball, or, you know, I'm a big road trip guide. I don't mind driving or anything like that.
Yeah.
To even if I'm playing like video games,
So you just
I just I'll throw the earbuds in and I just listen to the audio.
Yeah.
And I think for the best of two worlds, I kind of think that's the best way to go. But that being said, there's nothing wrong with YouTube. YouTube has this awesome feature now that you can set up that it is a podcast.
Okay.
And I know with the way YouTube Premium is now and stuff like that, it can be just the audio option as well to the visual. So I guess maybe it's more of a preference, you know, if you're listening or watching right now and you want to do your own thing, I'd say at the end of the day, it's always going to be your preference. I prefer the Spotify for podcasters option.
Right.
Only because it gives you just that broader, I guess, base and everything like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's preference. Yeah.
Do you think it's easier to reach new listeners on YouTube? Because so with mine, I really had no experience in this realm.
Right.
I had no idea how it was going to work. I'm like, oh my God, am I going to get like 5 listeners on my first thing? And like 4 of them are my family.
Wow.
You know, and so we elected to do Spotify, we do Apple, and then we do YouTube. And what I found is on YouTube, like you say, I'm actually reaching people that maybe that wouldn't have just come across us organically on Spotify. Yeah. So I don't know if that's the algorithm or what it is, but what are your thoughts on that?
So here's the beauty about YouTube that completely, in my mind, kicks the ass on Spotify.
Okay.
And it is the algorithm portion of it. And that is because with YouTube, and again, if you don't upload or anything like that to YouTube, you don't know this because this is all back end stuff. Yeah. Is you can tag it by location. You can put a bunch of different tags in there.
Okay.
And it makes it so, you know, if you Google search or YouTube search for that matter, whether it's, you know, for example, Brad Ellis, right? Or Giancarlo Stanton for the Yankees or something like that. If they have a tag, it will pop up somewhere in the search feed. Okay. Potentially. Yeah. And at that point, it is a little bit tough because I wouldn't say it's kind of like the roulette portion of it, but Google operates YouTube, so you never know sometimes what just might pop up on the top portions of it.
Nobody's cracked that code
right,
yet.
Exactly. But that's the beauty about YouTube is like, in essence, you don't have to market the way that you would have to market with, say, Spotify, where Spotify, you don't have that feature. Yeah. You know, you can put, you know, your location in there, and that's all fine and well. And that does help. I don't want to make it sound like that doesn't help. Right. But you know, you can't do the tags or anything like that with Spotify, where, you know, Spotify at that point, unless you have it linked up automatically to post, say, within an article or within a tweet or something like that, you actually have to go out and embed something in to, say, an article or a tweet or a post or anything like that. And so in that space, that's where, like I said, YouTube just kicks the ass on Spotify. Yeah. It just does.
Well, and this is just all the tactical stuff that you're just such a breadth of knowledge on, and it's all new to me, and I'm fascinated by it. Obviously, we make content on TikTok and Instagram, and we do share to Facebook. But like all the apps are just so different, and coming into this, I thought it was going to have more similarities to making social media content, and really it's just a whole other ballgame. And I'm so grateful for you guys for kind of guiding me through it. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is, obviously we mentioned about, you know, political divisiveness and all of that stuff, and you know, we're kind of, I think, coming down from the peak of cancel culture. Yeah. But when you guys make videos, do you do a lot of are you scrutinizing your content, trying to look for not offending? Like, do you worry about not offending people, or do you just say, listen, my listeners know my intentions. Yeah. We're good. What are your thoughts on that?
I personally don't worry too much about that. It's funny you bring up the editing. Personally, I don't enjoy making edits because, to me, the more genuine you can be with something, the better. Yep. And it's kind of funny because it always kind of depends a little bit. You know, I think the really good example of it, honestly, the Yankees with Domingo Germán threw a perfect game, you know, the 24th in big league history. But he has a big caveat on him the rest of his life. He is a domestic abuser. He was suspended for it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And for me personally, I'm not afraid to go near it It's kind of like one of those, like, if you avoid it, you're kind of setting yourself up for disaster in a way. And look, it's hard to discuss sometimes too. Like, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I do probably struggle with that. Yeah. And it is what it is in that realm. But I'm not concerned, because if you are a regular listener, you do know what my intentions are. Yeah. You know, and if you aren't, then whatever.
It is what it is.
Yeah. But everything is different, right? I'm not, not to say that I'm struggling with it, but like, we don't discuss a ton of college football on Fresh Takes all that often. College football has a really big scandal going on right now with Northwestern, with hazing and stuff like that going on. And the coach got fired yesterday for it, or 2 days ago now. And I know I don't have a problem discussing it, but I don't know if Nick's going to necessarily be in that. So you always have to kind of, in the co-host space of it, when you have two of you going, that's where it can sometimes actually be tricky, because you don't know if, one, they're going to be comfortable discussing it, or two, if they even have the information that you have even, or maybe they have more information than you. Yeah. And then you're setting yourself up for disaster sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, because here we were just talking about censorship. And unfortunately, one of the things that I hate about cancel culture is that it almost leads to self-censorship in that way. Like you say, you don't know if they're going to want to like go there, because if there's going to be backlash. And you know, I had a guest on the podcast too, who we had to edit something out. And I mean, it was so evident to me from our discussion that he was really actually trying to be very progressive and make a nice statement, but he was so afraid of a misunderstanding. And so we ended up cutting it. And I was like, no worries, you know, I get you. But at the same time, I'm thinking like, you know, that kind of sucks, because it could have been a really good moment for him to show that side of him. You know what I mean? And so it's just such a tough thing, because people are complex. Yeah. I don't remember. I'm not sure the order that these are going to come out, but if the episode with my husband has come out by this point, I discussed some pretty big flaws that I had. And I mean, I am not that same person. I actually pride myself on the improvements that I've made on myself. And it's like, you know, someone can bring up my past, and I'm really ashamed of it. But I also have committed myself to doing certain things because of that. And so, you know, I just think that cancel culture looks at things too black and white to say, and just kind of forget the fact that we are human beings. We can make mistakes. Definitely. And, you know, so it's just, I think it's more complex.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of it, right? Is the complexity of it. And, you know, to bring up, go back to those, what you did was incredibly strong. I was like, wow, like this is actually pretty incredible, because you don't get that all that often, even sometimes within these spaces. Yeah. And people do get vulnerable and stuff like that, and that's awesome, but I don't think there's enough of it sometimes. So I thought what you did was incredibly strong. So if you know, like you said, wherever that falls within where we are recording, so be it. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the other guests, and I was like, I thought that was fine and perfect. But you're right. It is kind of, even to, you know, our own self, I guess, visions and everything like that. It's like, wow. Yeah. Because I was sitting there going like, pretty incredible. Like, that would be awesome. And then upon hearing that, I'm like, damn.
I know. Well, and like you said, I relayed to him at that point too. I said, for any future edits, I said, just remember, the more that we like slice and dice everything that we say, we're going to lose the authenticity. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to be on this platform, where I remember saying to you, I'm like, I say fuck a lot. I'm sorry. I'm going to try not to, but it just, I want to be me. Yeah. And I'm not saying it to be a vulgar person. No. It's just I'm a passionate person. And so sometimes when I'm talking, it happens.
Believe me, I refrain myself pretty well in the podcast space. Yeah. From F-bombs, but if you get me off camera, it's probably my third. The F-bomb in its various forms is probably about my third favorite two-word. So I'm with you there.
Well, like I say, I just want to reach people. And, you know, the thing we were referencing before was I went through a period of my life where I was addicted to a drug and pulled myself out of it. And you know, there was a part of me for a long time who was like so afraid someone was going to bring it up and find out, and like, oh my God, I'd be called out. My life would be over. But I was missing the whole other side of that, which is, I might be able to help somebody who's in it.
Yeah.
Or I might be able to, like, someone who's got this shameful thing in their past that's holding them back from doing something. Like, they might hear me and be like, oh, okay. So, like, you can change. People will believe in you again.
Yeah.
People will, and so it's like, I feel like I almost just feel called to be vulnerable so that I can help someone who's maybe where I used to be,
Yeah.
And so I think that's the beauty of podcasting and sharing your story and your takes. You just never know how you're going to reach people.
No, and that's even something that I shared with you. Gosh, what was it? Probably second or third recording, maybe. That we did is the way I look at it is even if you reach one person, that's enough. I mean, I know it's maybe not the best space for, say, a podcast necessarily, but I mean, for life, just in general, even, right?
Yeah.
If you're able to reach one person, like that's something that can make an impact. And, to piggyback off of you a little bit, I've never had to deal with addiction or anything like that, but I certainly have seen plenty of people in that space.
Yeah.
Some who've pulled out, some others who haven't. And it's important, I think, to still have those voices out there that, that no matter what, at the end of the day, whether it's addiction or any other issue, right? There is that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And if like I said, if you can reach one person with that, success. That's mission accomplished.
Well, and I think we just all need to just pull the veneer off a little bit.
Yeah.
For a long time, it was like a competition on social media of whose life was the most perfect. And, kind of watching it, I've fallen into the trap where I'm watching people thinking, oh, they don't have the struggles I do.
Right.
God, it must be easy for them. And then it's just like, no, it's not. Like, everybody's got their stuff. Everybody, like, whether they're telling you about it or not, I promise you someone is struggling with something. And, so it's just important to remind everyone that, we're all human and we're all dealing with stuff.
Right.
And if you can help someone with something that was a struggle, like, maybe think about it.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
I switched up the rapid fire questions a little bit so that you couldn't be a cheater and figure them out ahead of time and study. So are you ready?
I suppose. I guess it's lucky I'm not exactly an entrepreneur either, but.
Okay, Paul. So what is something that you are really good at?
Probably. So I'll go with one that maybe some people don't necessarily know, but some people do.
Okay.
Geography.
Geography.
I could if I go to a place once, I don't need GPS anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Swear to God.
Wow.
So like when I go and see my one buddy in Cleveland, he lives outside of Cleveland, but all I needed was the address once, use GPS once, and we're good to go, for example. I pulled our family out of the Bronx one time after getting lost after a Yankee game. I could kind of go on, but yeah, I was the Geography B champion in 7th grade. So
oh my gosh.
I'll toot my own horn here a little bit, but yeah, geography, I'll go with the non-sport route or anything like that. But geography, yeah, I'm a big geography guy. So that's something I'm pretty good at. I'd say.
That's hysterical. So I am like queen of trivia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good at trivia in every category except geography. I am so illiterate. Like, I think when I used to play with my husband and our family, like, he would be embarrassed of how dumb I am.
So when when that would come up in Trivial Pursuit, you would really be hoping that somebody else would be able to take the step up.
Lean on the teammate for that one, for sure. Okay, what is something that you're not great at that maybe you're working on, or what's your flaw?
Oh, man. That's a good one. See, my main issue is I'm just my own worst critic at the end of the day. And that's always been since really forever. And again, we'll peel back the onion moment. My brother was in like advanced classes.
Okay.
And he's only 13 and a half months younger than me. So you can kind of maybe see where I'm going with this a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So we happened to be overlapping in a couple classes in high school, and that was always made for a fun time for the teacher anyway.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I'd say I've always painted maybe myself in not the best light. And I don't know if maybe it's necessarily a big flaw because a lot of people do just have that, but I would say probably still trying to think of myself a little bit better and stuff like that. I've always considered myself to be the least confident person in a way. So I think kind of maybe building that and figuring that out. I mean, it's kind of tough sometimes because I don't mind being off on my own island every now and then anyway. So I'd say probably that would be my biggest negative flaws, whatever you want to call it, about myself.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that. I'm definitely very critical of everything that I do, but I also thought that confidence was just something you had or didn't have. I didn't realize it was like a skill that
you definitely have to work on it.
Cultivate. So that's interesting. Okay, can you give us a lesson that you have learned through podcasting, content creation? What's a big lesson that you've learned?
Not everything is going to be a banger.
Not going to bat 1,000, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of harkens back to some of the stuff we talked about, right? I mean, if you whiff on the algorithm even once, sometimes it can set you back for a couple steps. And, you know, coming into with some programs and other stuff, not so much. Man, if you get caught behind even a little bit, it's not good. So,
can you course correct?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's all.
You know me, I love a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part, you know, that's one of the things that we just kind of deal with in general here with the stuff that we produce, whether it's our podcast or, you know, anything over on like the news and other content side of things. But man, if the Google algorithm isn't with you that day,
yeah,
it's not good.
Good luck to you.
Exactly. But other days, you know, hey, it's fantastic. It's great. You know, you can take off and run.
So we are all slaves to the algorithm, is what you're telling me.
Exactly.
So you kind of answered this earlier, but what podcast, show, YouTube, what channel, what app, what's your favorite thing? What are you on the most right now?
Oof. I would say Spotify, only because like summer's my busy months.
Yeah.
Travel wise, just with baseball, work. If I'm go golfing, obviously I have to listen to something in the car to get to the golf course. Yeah. Traveling, so yeah, Spotify at least at the moment. But I mean, I'm still through. It's interesting that we're talking about some of the stuff right now, given the way everything's kind of broken down the past 10 days based on the recording, right? Between Twitter versus Threads at this point. I'm not big on Threads yet. I like the concept, but you could tell they were a bit behind. But I'm still like Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram. Not quite I don't even use Snapchat for its right purpose. I do a lot of texting on Snapchat.
I'm too old for Snapchat now. I had to cancel.
But I'd say overall right now, Spotify is probably the go-to app. Just plug in, listen, and get about whatever I gotta get going on.
I never thought I'd find anything better than Apple Music, but I have to say Spotify kind of kicks the pants off them with the curated playlists and just all of it. I'm a big...
To piggyback off that, I mean, a lot of it's just what you prefer. Like, I'm going to date myself here in some ways because it killed me when I learned a few years ago that Groove Shark was no longer a thing. And
I don't even know what that is.
It was just a website that had music on it.
Okay.
And I guess it could have been like a semi-precursor to like Spotify or Apple Music in a sense.
Okay. See, but Napster and LimeWire.
No, see, exactly. But like, I know exactly. No, LimeWire, I apologize to the Russo family computer, wherever it's laying rest right now, but because of LimeWire. But yeah, Groove Shark was like a streaming service, though. It was weird. Okay. It wasn't. You could pay a fee and you could download music off it. I remember. I never did because LimeWire existed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I guess Spotify for me, but yeah, whichever each your own would be, I guess, technically also the answer for that one then for other people. So yeah.
Well, Paul, this has been awesome. I'm so excited that you agreed to be the guest today. Like I say, I love bothering you with questions, and I think it's so good for everyone to hear. You just have so much information, and you're just a great friend and source of knowledge for me. So thank you so much for being here. Where should everybody follow you, and what podcast should they be subscribing to right now? Yeah, podcast wise, Concrete Jungle New York Baseball Podcast, Fresh Takes with Russo and Felice. Those would be the two. Spotify, I forget the other major podcasting platforms we shoot out to with that. Okay. But there, you obviously fingerlakes1.com YouTube channel. Can't forget that. Yes. But if you care enough to have my, as I call it, crappy baseball and NASCAR knowledge spewed on your timeline, Twitter, Paul Russo 32, Instagram, that's the same handle. Well, and talk yourself up,
I can't remember.
Paul.
I can't remember. TikTok is the P Roos. That's the one where it zigged.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's there. I'm also on Twitch, by the way.
You are on Twitch.
I every now and then stream on Twitch if you are into e-racing like I am.
Okay.
Paul Russo, all lowercase, is where you can find me there. I didn't get creative with that. That was the middle of the pandemic one that was like, I'm bored. Let's do this.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it lives.
Well, thank you so much again. And guys,
you.
if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, tell people about it, subscribe on all the platforms. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening. Be sure to follow us on all the socials: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.